Hello, I'm here again, but this time in space, because I'm going to be talking about my favorite job, Astrologian. And by favorite job, I mean I'm absolutely garbage at it, which I think makes me qualified to talk about it. Now, Astrologian is known as the busy healer, where you have a lot of buttons to press. This makes everybody go, haha, oh my god, it has so many buttons, XD, I love pressing them. And then you just roll your face around the keyboard, and you don't really know what you're doing. So I'm here to give you maybe the most basic rundown I can of Astrologian. Now, Astrologian's defining feature is the cards. You draw a lot of cards and you play a lot of cards. You can draw a card every 30 seconds, but you do have 2 charges of it. This is important for later, but whenever you want to draw a card, you just click draw. If you don't like the card that you drew, you can hit redraw to draw another one. You can only do that once per card draw though, so you cannot keep fishing for a card that you want. The play button will turn into whatever card you drew so that you can play that card. You also have undraw, which is a completely useless function and you should never do it, and you should never have it on your hotbar. You can achieve the same effect by right-clicking the card buff anyway. Now, what are all these cards you can draw, and why do you want to bother drawing them anyway? Now, outside of the 500 MP you get from drawing one, these are very important for raid buffs. There are a total of 6 cards that you can draw. These are the Balance, the Arrow, the Spear, the Bowl, the Ewer, and the Spire. Now, these cards all give a 6% damage buff if you give them to the right people. The ones on the left are for melee, they have the blue border, and the ones on the right are for ranged, they have the purple border. If you give them to the wrong people, the buff is only 3%, so try to avoid that. Now, outside of giving the cards to the right people, you have your own personal minigame under the name of Astrodyne. Now, above every card is a seal. Every time you play a card in combat, you will gain a seal. You never want to play a card if you already have 3 seals, because having 3 seals allows you to activate Astrodyne. In my example picture, I have 1 of each seal, however, you only need 3 seals total, they could all be the same kind, to activate it. However, having the different kinds of seals boosts Astrodyne's effects, depending on how many different seals you have. The massive wall of text over my character basically just says, if you only have 1 seal, you gain an MP regen buff. If you have 2 different seals, you get a 10% spell speed buff. And if you have 3 seals, you also get a 5% damage and healing potency increase. Ideally, you're going to want all 3 seals every time you do it. However, that's not going to happen all the time. Just having 2 seals is pretty good. If you only have 1 seal, it's just, you got unlucky, that's it. Assuming your DPS are actually doing their jobs, it is better to prioritize getting the right card for them over your 3rd correct seal, just because the damage boost of 6 on them is more than 5 on you. Now, on top of these cards that you can give people, you also have a button that you can do every 2 minutes called Divination that gives your whole party in range a 6% damage buff. When this is used in conjunction with your cards, this is how you do your proper raid buffs. There is a bit more to go over though before I show you how to do a proper, and that's proper with a lot of asterisks, opener and 2-minute burst window. Next up is Minor Arcana. This allows you to draw the Lady of Crowns or the Lord of Crowns. The Crown Play button will turn into whichever you draw, allowing you to use it. The Lady of Crowns is a free 400 potency of healing, while the Lord of Crowns is a free AoE that does 250 potency. Now this is definitely a lot to weave. Even if you were just single weaving every time, it would take about 7 or 8 GCDs just to get this all out, and this does not line up well with others. And this is why we have light speed. This makes all of our GCDs instant cast so we can double weave after all of them. Using this, we can now play and draw a card in the same GCD, as opposed to dedicating 1 GCD to each action. Now with that lengthy explanation out of the way, let's go into how to actually do the opener and burst windows, which is really important on this job. Now first, you want to make sure you have a card drawn and you have 2 charges, or at least approaching the 2nd charge. Now you want to do your pre-pull GCD and weave light speed after it. Now your next GCD, most likely your dot in this case, you're going to want to double weave, playing a card, and then drawing another one before your GCD timer resets. Now, I am playing it in slow motion so you can see it, but this is incredibly fast. You need to do this within 2.5 seconds. Now I'm a degenerate who clicks on my abilities and my party list is really far away from my hotbar, so if I moved it, it'd probably be easier, but this will probably be easier if you have a setup that you like, that you can do fast. You then want to repeat this with your next GCD, with your next play/draw combo. Remember, I'm only doing this with myself and my Chocobo, so I don't have that many targets to pick from, but in a full party, you're going to need to decide who you give these cards to and decide on the fly. This also doesn't include any redrawing, so keep that in mind. Now you want to divination and then play your final card. This will give you enough seals to activate Astrodyne on the next GCD, but we have one other thing. We then want to pull our Minor Arcana card and activate Astrodyne after that. Do keep in mind I do not have all 3 seals in this example, and if I had drawn the Lord of Crowns, I would have played it here as well. However, since we got the lady, we'll just save it when somebody needs a heal or till we're approaching the Minor Arcana coming off cooldown. Please keep in mind that this took me 3 or 4 tries to do because I'm bad, and this was in a controlled environment where I didn't have to do any kind of mechanics or pick any party members outside of my Chocobo and myself. So it's actually a little bit harder when you do it in practice. Now, as you're going into a 2-minute window, as your divination is coming off cooldown, you just want to do light speed beforehand, play a card, then do divination, draw play. But because it's Astrologian, it's not that easy. There is a catch. Because of the way the card drawing works, you will draw an extra card prior to the burst window. Because of this, when you enter your 2-minute window with 1 card drawn and 2 cards in the bank, you will already have 1 Astrodyne seal. Therefore, you have to activate Astrodyne before you would draw the 3rd card. And then from there it snowballs, because then you'll end the burst phase with 1 Astrodyne seal, you'll draw a 2nd one in between the burst, and then you go into the next burst with 2, and then that cycle repeats till you get to the 6-minute window. Now it gets a little tricky here because you're going to be entering the burst phase with an Astrodyne, meaning you're going to need to Astrodyne, then divination, then do all of your card shenanigans, and as Astrodyne is ending, do Astrodyne again. And then assuming the fight is taking that long, everything will repeat from there. And it gets even a little trickier because if you were to draw a Lord of Crowns card on the odd minute window, you would then save it for the 2-minute burst, meaning that sometimes, if you're lucky, you may have to do 2 Lord of Crowns for the big damage, but that is extra weaving. And I don't want to go into the possibility of redrawing here, as that is way more complicated, but all you need to know is to just keep doing your divination in the same point for each burst and opener, and everything will work out. Instead, I am going to direct you towards the Balance Discord. This is where I've learned all this information, and while their diagrams can be a little intimidating to look at the start, if you take the time to read it, it makes a lot of sense and will definitely help you out. Even if you're not looking to optimize the job, it is already pre-made resources that I do not want to steal that you should go look at. And with that lengthy explanation of the cards done, I'm going to go rapid fire through everything else unless it actually needs an explanation. Alright, we've got Fall Malefic. This is your spammable GCD, 250 potency. Make sure you're always pressing this if you're not using anything else. And we have Combust 3. This is a 55 potency over 30 seconds. Just use this whenever it runs out. Make sure this is always ticking. It's 550 potency in total, so make sure it doesn't fall off. And for AoE, we have Gravity 2. This is a targeted AoE, so you do not have to stand in the middle of the enemies. You can target one and do it from a distance. And this is a gain on 2. It's 130 potency, so use it on 2 or more targets. And last we have Macrocosmos. This is not really a damage GCD. It is more for the healing, but it does do damage, so I'll include it here. This is 250 potency with a 40% fall off, meaning 150 for every remaining enemy. And this absolute unit of a text box reads that if you do Macrocosmos, everyone will get a status effect called Macrocosmos that will heal them for 200 potency plus half of whatever damage they took in that time it was on. You don't have to wait for the effect to expire for this to go off. Macrocosmos' button turns into Microcosmos, so you can detonate it manually. This is on a lengthy 3-minute cooldown, so you will not get to do this more than a couple times per fight, but do try and remember you have it. I tend to forget, but it's a really good ability. Now let's move on to the healing GCDs. We have Benefic 1. This is garbage, do not use it. 500 potency healing for a GCD, don't use it. Stop using it. Next is Benefic 2, it's an 800 potency cure, and it's a lot better than Benefic 1, so just use this if somebody needs single target GCD healing. And last for single target, we have Aspected Benefic. This is a 250 potency cure with a regen effect of 250 for 15 seconds. This is 1500 potency and healing, and this is pretty much your lifeline on tanks and dungeons. Now, coupled with these single target GCD heals, we have Sinistry. This is an ability on a 2-minute cooldown, and basically you put this on a party member and they'll get 40% of the heal from the GCD. You pretty much just want to put this on somebody you're about to Benefic to, so that way they get a 40% boost. Note that this does work with Aspected Benefic, however it's only the initial heal of 250 and none of the regen. Now for our group heals, we have Helios. This is a 400 potency cure. This isn't the worst thing to use, but it's not the best. You usually have other off-global healing, as well as even a regen heal I'll talk about next that you should prioritize. That being Aspected Helios, which is a 250 potency cure with a 150 regen for 15 seconds. This is pretty good. It's a 1000 potency cure in total, so make sure you use this one over Helios when you can. Now, complementary for these group heals, we have 2 abilities, the first of which being Horoscope. This is on a 60-second cooldown and basically gives everybody Horoscope for 10 seconds. When you activate it again or let it expire, it'll heal everyone for 200. However, if you use Helios or Aspected Helios, it'll boost the potency to 400, and they'll be allowed to keep the effect for 30 seconds instead of just 10. It is totally valid though to use this just for the 200 potency heal, just because it's an off-global. You don't need to do a Helios every time this is up, but if you can line it up, it's pretty good. And we also have a Neutral Sect. This is another ability on a 2-minute cooldown that boosts all of your healing GCDs by 20%. But its main function is the fact that it'll give your aspected moves a shield on top of the original heal. This will make an Aspected Benefic give a 625 potency shield, as well as an Aspected Helios giving everybody a 312 potency shield. It's pretty good. Now for the rest of our off-globals, let's start with the single target ones. First off, we have Essential Dignity. Essential Dignity is on a 40-second cooldown, and you can use 2 charges of it, so you can use it quite often. This is a 400 potency cure, but will be boosted up to 900 based on how much HP the target has. Once a party member is at 30% or less, you'll have the maximum amount of 900. Next up, we have Exaltation. This is on a minute cooldown, and it gives the target party member a 10% damage mit, and then when it's done, after 8 seconds, they get healed for 500. This is very good. Obviously, this should be used with tanks, whether they take a buster or they're doing dungeon pulls, but frankly, you could just put this on somebody that needs health, and if you know they're not going to take damage for 8 seconds, this is a free Benefic. And last off, we have Celestial Intersection. This is a 30-second cooldown, but has 2 charges. It is a 200 potency cure with a 400 potency shield attached. While this is less of a shield than White Mage's equivalent, you can crit this, meaning the shield will just be bigger by default. It's pretty good. Now, just to be confusing, for our group heal GCD, we have Celestial Opposition, just to confuse you on the names. It is a 200 potency cure with a 100 potency regen for 15 seconds that's on a minute cooldown. That's a solid 700 potency in total, so make sure to use this when you can. Next up, we have Collective Unconscious. This will make you stop whatever you are doing to put up a big magic barrier. This will last for 18 seconds or until you cancel it. Do keep in mind you cannot do any other actions while it is up. While inside, it will give everybody a 10% damage mitigation as well as a regen for 15 seconds. The duration on the regen will be refreshed as long as they are standing in the barrier. Because standing still for 18 seconds is useless and impractical, you can actually just activate the ability very fast, then move, and you will get the same regen effect as well as about a 3-second damage mitigation. So if you weave it in, it's pretty much just a regen with a small damage mitigation attached to it. Please use this. I kind of forget to use this outside of really hard content. Now for our final ability, we have Earthly Star. This is also on a minute cooldown, but you should pretty much use this off cooldown all the time. You place a ground targeted AoE That is absolutely massive. It's super big. If you miss somebody, it's their fault, not yours. You can detonate it manually at any time. When you do, it will explode for a cure of 540 and a damage of 205. However, if you let it sit for at least 10 seconds, it will get upgraded into a 720 potency cure and a 310 potency damage effect. Unless it is a matter of life or death, try to never detonate it early. Always detonate it after it upgrades. And that's how you play Astrologian. Just gotta make sure you're doing your off global heals when appropriate. If you need to do your GCD heals, you boost them. And make sure you're doing your cards correctly. That is the biggest part of your kit that needs to be played well, so make sure you're doing that. Now, some of that is dependent on your DPS, right? If your DPS are just rolling their face on the keyboard, you're not going to get much return out of it. But you should always practice to do it right, as opposed to just letting it slip and ruining any kind of muscle memory you develop. But that's it. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.